Can you see the screen? Yep, good. Okay. Thank you so much for hosting me and asking me to come on. And I thought, what am I going to talk about that you probably would want to hear? And I thought, you know what, I'm going to just do what I'm really passionate about, and what we're doing at Tamarack right now, and how exciting it is. So it's called a Deepening Community. And we are helping groups and organizations basically host conversations within their neighborhoods. And so I'm just going to walk you through these deepening community projects, and it's a kind of a 6-step process that we go through, and hopefully you'll be inspired or learn something new. So let me go here. So I just wanted to let you know, if anyone hasn't heard about the Tamarack Institute, we've been around for almost 15 years, and we have 2 areas of Tamarack Institute. One is a learning center, which has these 5 interconnected practices of collective impact, community engagement, collaborative leadership, innovation, and evaluating impact. And basically we do a lot of workshops, tools, resources, webinars, and then we have vibrant communities, which are 2 practice areas. So we take everything we learn in Tamarack at the Learning Center, and then we hone them in and we practice them either in cities reducing poverty or cities deepening community. And I'm the team lead for the Cities Deepening Community work, and it is so exciting. I've been here doing this role at Tamarack for 2.5 years. I've been at Tamarack for 5. And so I will just go into the Deepening Community and just give you a foundation to the work we're doing. We've been doing Deepening Community work for almost 5 years. We're realizing that social isolation, that sense of belonging, that the whole civic duty is really decreasing, and there's lots of books that talk about that. Robert Putnam's book, since the 60s. We have a lot of research. Just last year, Angus Reid, which did a research across Canada, that isolation and loneliness is on the rise. There's lots of links to the health impacts of loneliness. It's been linked to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, to diabetes. And so there's a massive health implications to social isolation and that lack of sense of belonging. And so we've been working across Canada to learn from communities and to work with them to invest in their residents and the citizens at the neighborhood level, but also at the city level. And we have built this momentum across Canada that, yes, this is needed. People want to do this. Cities want to do this. And so we have this Cities Deepening Community practice area to support cities, towns, and neighborhoods to develop strategies. We're calling them neighborhood strategies, but they can be citywide. They can be however you define a neighborhood, right down to an apartment building. We have about 4,000, over 4,000, actually, it's actually 6,000 now, people part of this learning community that we have. And we just launched a membership to support those who really want to dive into these developing strategies. And we launched it in June of last year, and we now have 17 members that we're working really closely with to develop strategies. And the next slide is just, why are we doing this and what are the goals of the project? And we want to obviously increase community engagement, the level of engagement that we're doing, the surveys. We want to go deeper and, get to the lived experience, get to the locals, and hear from them and learn from them when we are developing the strategy. We really want to, do an assessment of the social capital that's within our communities. building that shared action and, you know, nurturing the diverse community leadership. So not having the same people at our tables, but broadening the tables and who sits around them. And then ultimately, which we have learned, is that developing a strategy is the most sustainable way of doing this work, especially at the city level. The funding is more stable. The plans are more stable, but also when you have a strategy, it's a lot easier to go to funders and foundations to seek support in the work that you're doing. We are also wanting to develop a national network, so that a lot of the times people feel alone in this work. And so we're trying to build that network up and support each other so that we learn. So pretty much exactly what we're doing today by, you know, hearing stories and helping and support each other. And then we really want to push and highlight the unique role of citizens. A lot of the times when we're working with groups, it's the institutions, the organizations, and municipal or government staff that really are at the table to make these decisions. And we're wanting to say, no, you really do need citizens' involvement right from the get-go, all the way through to the implementation of the strategy. So that's just a bit of a background on the Deepening Community initiative that we're doing. And what I want to dive deeper into is our community roadmap that we use. There are guides out there, there are books out there, and what we are hearing from those doing this work is that they want something very simple, easy to use, that they can craft, because Cormac Russell says when you've seen one neighborhood, you've only seen one neighborhood. So what is a way that we can do this work and cater or craft it to our neighborhood? So we call it a roadmap, because maps can always be changed. You add your streets, you take away streets, you know, so that it's not this guide that thou shall follow this and thou will get from point A to point B. Roadmaps, there's many ways of getting from point A to point B. So that's why we decided to say a roadmap. It's 6 steps, and on average, it takes 9. I would actually, on average, takes a year that we've noticed, if they're really honed in on this and really want to move it forward. It's taken groups about a year. So what I want to do is I want to introduce you to Oshawa. And this is a group that has gone through this just recently. And I am just so excited and thrilled and inspired that I want to use their story to walk you through these steps. So Oshawa, it's 173 townhomes, 12 units. They have a community center within this neighborhood. It is surrounded by this massive park. And it's on Lake Ontario. So if I was to compare this property to other homes, it would be $1.5 million property. It has been labeled as a priority population. It has been labeled as social housing. So I practice the ABCD in terms of what is amazing about this property. And unfortunately, they have labeled it as social housing. And so this group has 2 new community developers who are now staff. So they wanted to change the way that people perceived this neighborhood. And they recognize that the residents in there have so many gifts and assets, but they didn't know how to gather it or what to do with it or how. They were new to this whole community development area. And so they became a member, and we have been going through this process. So in stage 1, we launched the project, and we worked with them to identify some key members. And they had 12 people, and 5 of them were residents. So we always say that half of them should be those that are local to the area, and should be the ones who are the local experts. And then they contacted and connected with all the organizations that knock on their door, which is lots of organizations. And then we talked about, okay, what do we want to know from this community? Why are we here? And we created some questions that we wanted to have our conversations about, and we created a survey to get the local gifts and the assets, and also to be able to reach more people. This was hard for this group because there were so many people who wanted to work with this group, but they wanted to make sure that it wasn't dominated by all of these organizations, and that they wanted the residents and the members to really be leading this project. And so we had to kind of almost like have the residents at the core, and then the organizations sat around the outside, if you wanted a picture, kind of like a bullseye. And because there was so many that wanted to be part of this. And so we had to kind of make sure that it didn't dominate, the organizations didn't dominate what happens with this project. And then we went to the community conversation. So we had our questions we wanted to ask, and then we also had our survey. And so they hosted conversations. The residents, kitchen conversations, they had times where people can sign up and come. They went to the groups that were already existing. So there was a crocheting group. So they went and they hijacked that group and talked to them about these questions that they had. And then they had the survey filled in. They did a community cleanup. They did, I'm trying to think, what else did they do? They did, a summer kickoff to get surveys. And then they were struggling because they weren't getting many people involved in this. And so they were like, do we stop doing this? Do we keep going? So then on the picture on the bottom was this corn roast. And they had 34 surveys before this corn roast. And then they did this corn roast, and who knew that food would bring people? So basically they had to take part in the conversations and fill in the survey, and they got these beautiful roasted corn, and they ended up getting 80 surveys, which was, trying to think, what was it? 46% of the residents were heard, which is really good. For those of you who do surveys and the data collection, that is really good. And they hosted 7 conversations. I forgot to tell you though that the conversations, we did a training on how to host conversations, how to create safe spaces. And you know, there's many ways of doing conversations: graffiti walls, art, talking. They did some conversations with youth. And so once they did these conversations and they had 80 surveys filled in, and the seven conversations that they did, they felt that they had enough to move forward. So the next step is the data synthesis part. And what was really interesting in the survey was these 2 questions that I highlighted on here, was how connected do you feel to the people in your community? And not many of them felt connected, but how interested are you working together to strengthen your community? Almost all of them. So we were so excited to see this, not to see that people weren't connected, but to see that people that aren't connected, but they also want to do something about it. So that gave some inspiration and some strength behind the data. What we also did with the data is the gifts and the skills. So all the participants were asked, what could you teach? What are you passionate about? What do you want to learn? And this is just a little snippet of what came out of the conversations. It's 2.5 pages. And the leadership group were amazed about what came out of here. And I was actually amazed because what's not on here was ventriloquism. They had no idea. And they said they have a whole whack of puppets, and that they were willing to teach that. So when they looked at here, they thought, wow, look at this. And yet and yet for the 2 years prior to this, they were seeking organizations to come and do painting. They were seeking organizations and institutions to come and do all this stuff for them. And they now realize they have this within that neighborhood. So that's the data collection piece. There's kind of more from it. And they came up with four, I'm trying to think, four themes. Communication. So how the housing corporation communicates with the residents, how residents communicate with each other. Another really big piece was a social part, doing lots of social things, movie night, game night, video game night. They talked about the beautification. So social housing in Ontario is very restricted, lots of red tape. You can't do gardens in the front yard. You can't do gardens in the backyard. No benches, because if you congregate, that means that there's trouble. And so they really wanted to talk about this beautification piece and how do we make this neighborhood a place that people do want to get out of their homes and be in. And then safety was another theme that came out of all of this. So we worked a lot on the data part. We themed. The other part of the gift and assets is they actually have the names and the contact information for all of these people. And I know in the very beginning, we had a conversation about asset mapping and what do you do with all of this and keep it live. I'm going to come back to that just kind of near the end, but don't let me forget if I don't talk about how we kept this alive. Stage 4. So this is the piece I think is really the most important piece, is a celebration piece of it. And what they did was they brought everybody who participated in this, invited them to come. The residents made soup. So it was in the fall, so it's pretty chilly. So they used local fruits and vegetables, and they made soup. And so people came and enjoyed a nice hot bowl of soup. They did Lakeview's Got Talent. So kids signed up to actually demonstrate and show their gifts that they had. And we also did open space, where we took those themes, and you'll see the picture there where we broke those themes into areas. And then we had 4 questions that we asked them for that theme. One was, what do we do together about this? What do we already have to work with about this topic? What else might we need and from who to make this work? And what does success look like? How do we know that we are safe? How do we know that this place is beautiful? And then they put Post-it notes on there. And in the core, it's called the stakeholder wheel. And so in the core is all the people who want to, like, yes, I'm passionate about this, I'm going to move it forward. And then those people who want to be involved, just tap me on the shoulder, and etc. as you go out. It's called the stakeholder wheel. And so we garnished some more information from that. And then stage 5 is the action planning stage. So we took everything that we learned, we put it into a 5-year plan, brought it back to the leadership committee. They talked about it, we tweaked it. And what I find so amazing about this group is those 5 residents that were part of the leadership, they said they own this. And each one of them took on one of those 4 areas. And then they started brainstorming ideas and stuff that came out of it. And then an organization said, oh, you want to do planter boxes? We can support you and purchase those for you. And then they talked about, well, what do you do with this food and how do we cook it? Someone else says, well, we have a chef. So if you want, you can use our chef and come in, and our chef will come in. So it actually showed that reverse that all that ABCD is really trying to do, and the residents are doing for themselves, and then they're being supported by the organizations and the institutions. So this is the phase that this group is at right now. The next phase is the implementation phase. And we just started implementing last month. And then COVID-19 happened. And so it was really funny because they stopped everything. And we had a discussion and said, no, let's look at different ways we can implement this, because you've got the momentum going. And I'm like, pull out your your gifts and your asset sheet, all of those things on there. And let's see who on there is willing to do some online painting, online ventriloquism, online stuff. Like, let's garnish and use the gifts and assets we have and do some online fun activities for the residents that are there. And so we just did, they don't have access to Zoom, so I lent them my Zoom account. And on Tuesday, the kids were really upset that they didn't have their jiu-jitsu, and their jiu-jitsu really brought community in. And so we did virtual jiu-jitsu, and the kids took part in that. And so the implementation phase of it, the leadership team doesn't own the plan, but they make sure that it keeps going. And then the next part of it would be the impact. So that's the, you know, sustaining the work, the impact, so that they then can say, yeah, the impact of this happened. This is why you need to fund us. So we need some more funding, and go forth from there. So I did that very briefly. This is just the steps again. Some key things to hear. I know this is not new, and you know, when I was looking at this was developed 4 years ago, and then I think of Cormac Russell and his touchstones. It reassures me that, you know what, we're on the right track with what we were creating and what we were doing and what we were hearing. So they're very similar to Cormac's touchstones. But for the conversation piece of it, it's really for this whole thing, the most important areas is that hosting conversations and that celebration piece of it. Making it fun, not doing your traditional focus groups and just plain old surveys, but doing some fun stuff. One of the groups that we did this with did a photo contest. And a lot of the people have never had a professional photo. So they got a professional photographer, and then they brought something that represented their community, and then they got some professional, and then they did this massive collage that went on the side of a building. So there's some really fun, innovative ways that you can do this stuff and still get what you need in terms of the data piece, to go to where people are. So we always say to them, don't do new meetings. Go and hijack the crocheting clubs meeting. Go to where the mom and tots groups are happening, and while the kids are playing, talk with the parents. Go to where the youth groups are meeting already and get on the agendas that are already happening, and you'll be able to reach more people. All of this moves at the speed of trust. And so building the project team and making those relationships and the trust with the residents, and the organizations and the institutions that are involved, it makes us go a lot faster and smoother. It's really simple and easy to use. And I think that's one of the perks about this. It's not a massive guide you need to read. Like, you just look at these 6 pictures, and it's pretty simple on how to do it, and that it is customizable. So, you know, it works with whatever neighborhood or community that you're working in. Yeah, so that's all I have. Thank you.